Level 1. $100,000. You made it here by hand. That's the thing you need to hold on to, because in about 4 minutes you're going to feel like you wasted 12 years. $100,000 took you 12 years, and it took every one of them. $40 on a Friday. $600 a month when the month allowed it. 2 emergencies that took 18 months back. You built this with your body, and nothing else helped you. Now you do the arithmetic on the next part, and the arithmetic tells you something obscene. $100,000 earning 8% makes $8,000 a year. To get to 1 million, you need 900,000 more. At your current contribution rate, working the way you work, saving the way you save, that is 31 years. 31 years. You are sitting in a car in a parking lot with the most money you have ever had in your life. And the number in front of you is 31 years. And you are trying to decide whether to be proud or sick. This is where most people quit. Not at 0. Here, 0 has an excuse. 0 is understandable. Nobody blames a man at 0. But 100,000 is proof that you can do it. And proof that doing it will take the rest of your life. And those two facts arriving in the same afternoon is the most demoralizing thing that happens on this entire road. Then you run the number again, properly this time, and it changes. Because 31 years assumes the money does nothing. 31 years is the calculation of a man who thinks he is still the only worker. And the $8,000 a year that the account produces is not a bonus. It's a second person, hired permanently, who shows up every January whether you do or not. You run it with compounding. 1 million comes in 19 years. You run it with compounding and your current contributions. 14 years. 14 is not 31. 14 is the difference between a plan and a sentence, and the entire difference came from the money you already have, doing what money does when nobody touches it. Here's what you have to understand at 100,000, and it's the whole reason this stretch is different from the last one. For 12 years you were the engine. Every dollar in that account arrived because you carried it there. The account was a bucket, and you were the only one filling it. Nothing you owned produced anything. You produced everything, and the moment you stopped producing, the whole system stopped. That's over. From this point forward, you are one of 2 workers, and the other one never sleeps, never gets sick, never has a bad month, never asks for anything, and gets a raise every single year without being told. This year, he earns 8,000. In 6 years, he earns 15,000. In 12, he out-earns the version of you who started this. The job changes at 100,000. For 12 years, the job was to produce. Now the job is to protect the producer. You look at your car in the parking lot. 140,000 miles. The passenger window doesn't go all the way up and you've stopped mentioning it. You could replace it. You have $100,000 and you have never once bought yourself anything that felt like a rival. And the thought sits there for a week, and it is not a stupid thought. You earned it. Anybody would say you earned it. You don't do it. Not out of discipline. Out of arithmetic. $30,000 for a car isn't $30,000. It's the second worker, fired, and the $8,000 a year he was going to produce for the next 40 years, gone with him. You drive the car with the window that doesn't close, and nobody watching you would guess what's in the account. And that gap between what you look like and what you have is going to widen for the next 17 years until it becomes the defining feature of your life. You don't have wealth at $100,000. You have an employee, and the only way to lose him is to spend him. Level 2. $175,000. The account goes up 13,000 this year, and you only put in 7. You read that line on a statement, and then you read it again. Because $6,000 appeared, and you cannot point to a single hour of your life that produced it. $6,000. At your job, $6,000 is 6 weeks. 6 weeks of alarms, commutes, meetings. The small daily indignity of asking permission to be somewhere else. The account did it in the background while you were doing all of that anyway. You have, for the first time, worked 2 jobs simultaneously without noticing the second one. And here's the specific danger of this level. And it kills more people than the market ever has. It stops feeling like your money. At 100,000, every dollar had a memory attached. You knew what you gave up for it. You could point at a number and remember the Friday. At 175,000, a growing share of the balance arrived on its own, and money that arrives on its own is spiritually much easier to spend because you never paid for it in Fridays. You start to hear a sentence in your head. It's only 6,000. It came from nowhere. That's the sentence. Learn it now. That sentence is how people at 175,000 end up at 175,000 for 9 years. Because it didn't come from nowhere. It came from $100,000 in 12 years, and it is not a windfall. It is a wage, paid by a worker you spent a decade hiring. Spending it is not spending free money. It's docking his pay. You watch it happen to somebody else. A guy you know hits a similar number around the same time. He tells you about it over a beer, and he's proud, and he should be. Then he buys a truck. Not a stupid truck. A reasonable truck, financed sensibly, at a payment he can absolutely afford. And every single sentence in that decision is defensible on its own. For years later you ask how the account's doing, and he changes the subject. Nothing dramatic happened to him. There was no crash, no disaster, no bad decision you could point at in a documentary. He just spent his second worker's wages every year, and a man who spends the wages keeps the worker but never hires another one, and 11 years from now. The difference between the two of you will be $400,000, and neither of you will be able to name the moment it happened. That's what this level actually is. It's the first time the money produces enough to be worth stealing, and the only person in a position to steal it is you. You start tracking the wrong thing on purpose. For 12 years you tracked the balance. The balance was the score. Now you start tracking a different number, and it's the only number that matters at every level from here to the end. How much did the money make this year without me? That number was $200 once. This year it's $6,000. It will be $11,000 at $300,000, and it will be $40,000 at $500,000, and one day it will be larger than your salary. And the day it passes your salary is the actual finish line of your working life, and nobody schedules a party for it because it happens quietly on a statement in a year that felt like nothing. Your income goes up, a raise, a second stream, something you built on the side. You watch yourself for the thing that eats everyone here. Lifestyle inflation. You wait for the urge to upgrade. It's weaker than you expected, and you understand why. 12 years of not spending didn't make you disciplined. It rewired what spending feels like. It stopped being pleasure and became noise. You aren't resisting a temptation. The temptation stopped calling. You put the entire raise into the account. The trajectory moves again. 14 years becomes 11. You don't have savings at $175,000. You have a second salary that nobody withholds tax from and nobody thanks you for. Level 3, $250,000. The phone rings. You are visible now. That's what $250,000 actually buys you, and nobody mentions it in advance. You have crossed the line where the industry can see you, and the industry has excellent eyesight, and it has been waiting patiently the entire time you were invisible. An advisor calls. He is polite and credentialed, and he says he noticed your account and would like 15 minutes, no obligation. He uses the word holistic. He asks about your goals, your timeline, your family, and he listens better than most people in your life, and that is not an accident, that is training. You go to the meeting. There's coffee in a real cup, not a paper one. There's a view. He's got a printed folder with your name on the front of it, spelled right, and you notice that you like the way that looks and you notice yourself noticing. He shows you a plan. It's a good plan. That's what makes it work. It is, essentially, your plan with a fee attached. 1%. 1% sounds like nothing. It is the smallest number he says all afternoon, and he says it quickly, in the middle of a sentence, between two larger numbers, and it is the only number in the room that matters. 1% of $250,000 is $2,500 a year. Over the 20 years between here and the end of this journey, at the growth rate he just showed you on his own chart, that 1% takes somewhere north of $200,000 out of the final number. $200,000. Which is more than you had in the account the day you walked into his office. He is not lying to you. Nothing he said was false. He simply presented a number in the units that made it disappear. That's the level. At $250,000, nobody scams you. The scam requires a lie, and there's no need for one. They charge you in percentages, because a percentage is how you hide a decade. Then the invitations start. A webinar. A private placement. A real estate deal with a 13% projected return, and the word projected is doing more work in that sentence than every other word combined. A fund with a lockup. A structured product with a name that sounds like a fortress. And you understand something about your entire past for the first time. At 0, nobody offered you anything. At 10,000, nobody called. You thought that was neglect. It was protection. The absence of attention was the last free defense you ever had, and it just expired and nothing announced it. Everything that arrives from here forward arrives because someone modeled what you're worth to them over 30 years and decided the lunch was worth buying. You keep the boring fund. It costs you almost nothing. It makes market returns. It is, by a wide margin, the best financial product available to you. And it is available to every person alive, and almost nobody takes it, because it cannot be sold by a man in an office who needs to justify a meeting. The best thing you can buy at $250,000 is nothing. That's a very hard product to build a career around, which is exactly why nobody is calling to recommend it. You don't have opportunities at $250,000. You have an audience, and the audience is pricing your attention in basis points. Level 4. For $100,000. The market drops 22%. $400,000 becomes $312,000. You lose $88,000 in 6 weeks. $88,000 is more than you earn in a year. It is more than the entire first 6 years of this journey. It is a house deposit, a decade of contributions, and it disappeared while you were doing your job and eating lunch and being a person. Here is what you need to know about this moment. Because this is the level where the whole thing usually dies. You are not being tested on your intelligence. You know the chart. You know the 200-year line. You know that every crash in history was a buying opportunity in retrospect, and you know it the way you know the capital of France. Which is to say completely, and it will not help you at 3 in the morning. You are being tested on your body. Because your body has never seen $88,000 go backwards. Your body watched you carry $40 at a time for 12 years to build this, and your body is now producing the exact chemical it produced when you were at 0 and the tire blew, and the chemical does not know what your net worth is. You open the app at a red light. You shouldn't. You do. It's down another 4%. And the light turns green, and somebody behind you leans on the horn, and you drive the rest of the way home doing math you already know the answer to. Here's the thing that saves you, and it isn't courage. It's that you felt this exact feeling before, at $14, at $550, at $9,000. Identical feeling. Same hour of the night. Same phone. Same darkroom. The number multiplied by 10 and the sensation did not change at all. The feeling does not scale. That's the discovery. It is the same size at every level, forever, which means the only thing that ever changes is whether you have already learned to sit inside it. You've been in training for this since the first $40, and you didn't know that's what the training was. You don't sell. And you do something that feels insane, which is that you keep contributing on schedule into an account that is losing money faster than you can add to it. $700 into a hole that opens by $4,000 a day. It feels like bailing a boat with a spoon. It feels, some weeks, actively stupid. It recovers in 11 months. Everyone who sold locked the loss and told themselves it was prudence. You did nothing, and the nothing was the entire skill. And the money you added at the bottom, the contributions that felt pointless, become the highest returning dollars you will ever deploy in your life, and you deployed them by accident, by refusing to change a schedule. That's worth sitting with, because it's the least intuitive thing on this entire road. Your best investing decision was not a decision. It was the absence of one. You made money in that crash by being too stubborn to open a form. Then you noticed the other thing this level did. For $100,000, even after the drop, produces about $30,000 a year in a normal year. $30,000 is more than you earned at your first full-time job. The 22-year-old you, who worked every day and was tired every day and asked for a Saturday off 2 weeks in advance, produced less than this account produces while you sleep. You have hired that man. Permanently. He works for you now, and he doesn't know he's working. You don't have a portfolio at $400,000. You have a nervous system that survived its first real test, which is the only asset on this road that cannot be bought. Level 5. $550,000. You become dangerous to your employer. Not loud. Not difficult. Nothing changes on the outside. But $550,000 is roughly 7 years of your expenses, and everyone in that building can feel the difference between a person who needs the job and a person who has selected it. They cannot name it. They adjust to it anyway. You get asked to do something unreasonable on a Thursday afternoon. You say that timeline doesn't work. You don't apologize afterward. You don't fill the silence, and the silence goes on about 2 seconds longer than silences normally go on, and then somebody else fills it, and the timeline moves. You walk back to your desk slightly stunned. That's it. That was the whole thing. That sentence was available to you every single day for 17 years, and you could not physically produce it. And today it came out flat and unremarkable, and the building did not fall down. At 0, you would have said yes and hated yourself in the parking lot. The parking lot is where your entire 20s happened. You understand now that every negotiation you ever lost, you lost before you walked into the room. You lost it at the balance. The raise you didn't ask for, the boundary you didn't hold, the exit you didn't take. All of them were decided by a number on a screen that had nothing to do with your competence. Leverage was never a personality. It was a balance sheet wearing a personality. Then the offer arrives. Someone approaches you about a business. It needs $150,000. The numbers are good. The person is credible, and you've known them long enough to know they're not selling you anything. This is a real opportunity and not a scam, and that is precisely what makes it hard. Because a scam you can refuse cleanly and go to bed. $150,000 is 27% of everything you have built in 17 years. You think about it for 3 weeks. You build the spreadsheet. You build the spreadsheet again with worse assumptions, and it still works. You lose sleep, and the reason you lose sleep isn't the risk. It's that you're finally seeing the thing that separates you from people with real money. And it is not intelligence, and it is not work ethic, and it is not nerve. It's the number of attempts. 150,000 is 27% of your life, and it is a rounding error in theirs. They can take 10 of these bets. You can take 1. 9 of theirs can fail. If yours fails, you go back 4 years, and 4 years at your age is not the same currency as 4 years at 25. A man who can take 10 shots is not braver than you. He is playing a game where the first loss is a Tuesday, and you are playing a game where the first loss is a funeral. You say no. They find the money elsewhere. The business does fine. Not spectacular, fine, and every so often over the next several years you'll hear an update. And run a small private calculation about what your share would have been, and you'll put it away again. It was the right decision. It cost you something anyway, and what it cost is the belief that the gap between you and them was ever about character. You don't have options at $550,000. You have one option and the judgment to know it's one. Level 6. $700,000. The money out-earns you. It happens on a statement in a year that was otherwise unremarkable. $700,000 at 8% produces $56,000. Your salary, after tax, is less than that. You sit with the number for a while because it does not feel the way you assumed it would feel. You assumed there would be a moment. There is no moment. There is a line item and a Tuesday afternoon and a slight ringing in your ears. You are no longer the primary earner in your own household. You have been demoted by your savings account. It is the best news of your entire adult life, and there is nobody you can tell, because the significance is untransmittable. It only lands if the listener was there for the $14 and the 9 days and the parking lot. You try to explain it once at dinner. You get about 2 sentences in and you can see it not landing, so you shorten it. They say that's great and mean it, and ask if anyone wants dessert. Then the psychology flips, and this is the level's real event. For 17 years, every decision you made was about upside. How do I add? How do I grow? How do I get more in? Now, quietly, without deciding to, you start thinking about downside. How do I not lose this? You catch yourself reading about bonds. Not because anyone recommended it. You just found yourself there, on a Sunday, reading about capital preservation, and something about that phrase felt good in a way that should worry you. Because the man who thinks about downside at 42 is the man who wakes up at 70 having earned 4% for 3 decades. That man exists. You've met him. He is not wrong exactly, but he is finished, and he doesn't know it, and he'll tell you at a party that he plays it safe and he'll believe that's a virtue. The reason the flip happens is arithmetic, not cowardice, and it's worth naming precisely. At 5,000, a 50% loss cost you $2,500 and 8 months. At 700,000, a 50% loss costs $350,000 in 8 years, and you do not have another 8 years to spend, because money is replaceable and the decade is not. You are no longer optimizing for return. You are optimizing for time, and you have never had less of it than you do now, with more of everything else. That's the trade nobody warns you about. Every year this works. The money gets stronger and the clock gets shorter, and those two things move in opposite directions for the rest of your life. You resolve it the only way it can be resolved, which is by not touching anything. You keep the same allocation you had at 100,000. Not because you're bold, because you've priced the alternative, and the alternative is a slower version of the same life, and you did not spend 17 years to arrive at a slower version of the same life. You don't have safety at $700,000. You have the first serious temptation to stop, and the arithmetic that makes stopping expensive. Level 7. $850,000. The last stretch is the fastest, and it feels like the slowest, and both of those are true at the same time. Mathematically, this is the easiest money of your life. The account throws off $68,000 a year on its own. You contribute 12. $850,000 becomes $1 million in less than 2 years without you doing anything different. And for the first time, the finish line is close enough that you can see it. That's the problem. The entire method for 17 years was that you didn't look. You put money in on a Friday because that's what Friday was for. There was no destination. There was only the input, again, forever, and the not looking was the reason the not stopping was possible. Now you look every day. 904,000. 911,000. 896,000. Because the market moved 4% and took a year of your contributions with it in an afternoon. You have never wanted anything this badly, and it is a number that you yourself decided was important. There is no ceremony attached to it. No institution recognizes it. It is a threshold you invented, and you are now emotionally hostage to it. And you know that, and knowing it does not help at all. You start bargaining. You think about accelerating. You look at ways to make it happen in 8 months instead of 20, and you catch yourself at $850,000, 17 years in, looking for a shortcut. That's the thing nobody admits. The man from level 1 never left. He just went quiet during the part where you were winning. He is still in there, still doing the math at a red light, still convinced that there's a faster way and everyone else already found it. You don't take the shortcut, but the fact that you considered it, this late, with this much, teaches you something permanent about yourself that no amount of money will fix. Then something happens that makes the number feel small. You get sick, or someone close to you does. Not catastrophically. Seriously enough. 3 weeks, a specialist, a bill for $11,000. You pay it. From the account. It takes 4 minutes. Then you sit down, because something just happened that requires attention. 17 years ago, a $180 tire started a chain reaction that took 8 months to escape and charged you 26% for the privilege. It followed you into the next year. It changed what you ate. $11,000 just happened, and it was Tuesday. That's the actual distance traveled, not the $850,000. The fact that a $180 event and an $11,000 event now sit in the same category. And the category is called handled. You don't feel rich. This is the part nobody says. At $850,000, you feel exactly as unremarkable as you did at $10,000. Because feelings do not scale with balances, they scale with the gap between what you have and what you're afraid of. The number moved and the fear moved with it, the way a shadow moves with the thing that casts it. You will never feel wealthy. Nobody does. The man with 50 million runs the same calculation with different digits and sleeps about as well as you do. That isn't a tragedy. It's the design. And knowing it now, before the million, is worth more than the million, because it's the only thing that stops the next decade from eating you alive in pursuit of a feeling that was never located in a number. You don't have security at $850,000. You have the correct relationship with never feeling like enough. Level 8. $1 million. It happens on a Wednesday while you're doing something else. You open the app for no reason and it says 1,001,000 for $106. You look at it. You wait. Nothing. No feeling arrives. You have been waiting 17 years for a feeling and it does not come, and you are standing in a hallway holding a phone, and the whole thing is over, and it's a Wednesday. That's the last lie the number tells, and it's the biggest one. The million was never going to feel like anything. It was the scoreboard, and you were told your entire life that the scoreboard was the game. Then, a week later, in the shower or the car, or somewhere equally unremarkable, the real one lands. $1 million at 8% produces $80,000 a year. $80,000 a year is more than you have ever earned working. It arrives whether you get up or not. It arrives if you are sick. It arrives if you are fired. It arrives every year for the rest of your life, and it grows. And next year, it will be 86,000. And the year after that, it will hire someone else. Your money now out-earns you permanently, and the gap widens every year from here without your involvement. You have left the labor market, not by working harder than everyone else. Some of them worked harder than you. Some of them are still working harder than you right now and will be for another 20 years. You left because 17 years ago you started feeding a machine that has been running continuously ever since. And it never needed you to be exceptional. It needed you to be uninterrupted. That's the whole thing. Uninterrupted. Now look at the arithmetic that nobody at zero can hear. The first 100,000 took 12 years. The 900,000 after it took 5. Read that again, because it is the only sentence in this entire road that matters. 9 times the money in less than half the time. Not because you got smarter. Not because you found better returns. Because at 100,000 you hired a second worker. And he hired a third. And by the end there were more of them working than there was of you. You spent 12 years building an employee and 5 years watching him build a company. That is why the first 100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make, and why everything after it accelerates. The first 100 is pushed by hand, uphill, with no engine and no help. Everything after is the engine. And here is the thing you finally understand about the man at zero. The one who was told to climb is mostly attitude. It was never attitude. He was standing at the bottom with no leverage, no reserves, no floor, and no time. Being told by people with an engine that the hill is mostly a mindset. It isn't a mindset. It's an engine. And the engine costs $100,000 in 12 years, and it cannot be borrowed, rented, inherited by most people, or skipped. You think about the car with the window that wouldn't close. You think about the guy with the truck, who is fine, who is genuinely fine, and who is also 17 years into a life where he still has to go in on Monday. Nothing separated the two of you except what each of you did with a second worker neither of you could see. Somewhere right now, someone is sitting in a parking lot with $100,000, running the arithmetic, and the arithmetic says 31 years, and they are deciding whether to bother. They are looking at the number the way you looked at it, as an amount. It isn't an amount. It's a hire. They don't know they already did the hard part. They think they're at the beginning. They're at the end of the beginning, which is a completely different place, and nobody has ever told them the difference. You are the same person at every balance. The money just decides how many of them are working for you.